The Army is making some big changes to the SHARP program, and we're going to talk about it in this video. My name is Lawrence. I'm a sexual assault response coordinator. My disclaimer's in the description below. This is SHARP for commanders and leaders. It's designed to be the wave tops, the key things that you need to take away. There's a supplemental video as well that's the slide by slide, line by line from the Army SHARP Academy if you would like that as a supplement. In addition to the policies that have been released that we're covering in this video, there are more policy changes coming out in the near future. Make sure that you always engage with your full-time SHARP professional or servicing legal office to make sure you're getting the most current information. The first change, and probably the most important, is victims of sexual assault can now make a restricted report if word gets out. So as long as one of three things doesn't happen, as long as they have not already made an unrestricted report, as long as they have not directly talked to law enforcement about it, or as long as law enforcement is not already investigating, that victim can make a restricted report where previously it had to go unrestricted. The next big change, and it works really well with the first one, is 540K declination with CID. Here's what that is. Many cases, a victim is the key person that has the information about the assault and is the key witness for that assault. Without their engagement with the process, CID cannot often investigate. Well, now we have procedures where a victim can decline to participate and CID has the ability to document this and end investigations early. There's fine print. CID is the expert on this one, and there are going to be cases where the victim doesn't want to participate, and due to public health or justice considerations, CID still has to move forward. So what does that look like in practice? If I'm a first sergeant in your formation and a soldier comes to me and says, "Hey, Top, I was sexually assaulted. I need to talk to someone about it." The old way, the minute I thought there was going to be a disclosure of sexual related misconduct, I immediately stopped them, often mid-sentence, and said, "Go see a SARC." That's not very good soldier care. So this new way, if they've told me this, I still have to tell the commander still has to tell CID. Once CID knows, that victim still has the ability to decline to participate. And if they talk to a SARC or VA before law enforcement opens that investigation, they can still go restricted. Commanders still have to call CID if they know about a sexual assault. That has not changed. Generally speaking, here's what happens if you're a commander and you are told about a sexual assault for one of your soldiers. You have to call CID. It has to be within 24 hours. You have to call the SARC. That would be me if I'm in your command. You have to tell your servicing staff judge advocate, and you need to push it up the chain. Also owe a report to command at the 8-day mark if you're a battalion commander about all the resources available for that victim and which ones they elected to choose, as well as any law enforcement or military CID type investigation activity. You're also responsible for safety, be it safety moves or expedited transfers or PCSs or the like. You're also responsible for making sure this is briefed monthly at the Sexual Assault Review Board, which meets the CMG requirement for the Army. A quick note about DA civilians. Our DA civilian teammates now have the ability to make unrestricted reports of sexual assault as well. This does not give them the ability to use TRICARE. If they do not have TRICARE, it does not create a new obligation to the government for healthcare, but they do have federal employee health benefit coverage. If there's an emergent situation, they can always use a military treatment facility if they're nearby one. And many states have the ability to cover forensic exams if they're done on the economy, in addition to people's health insurance. When it comes to reprisal, which we'll talk about shortly, civilians still have their right to use the Inspector General for anything pertaining to a report of sexual assault or retaliation. Sexual harassment still belongs to EEO. We also have to talk about retaliation. Not just retaliation, but how we talk about retaliation, because here, precision and accuracy matters a lot. So think of retaliation as like the umbrella term. Retaliation is any of a range of retaliatory behaviors that our soldiers, bystanders, witnesses, chain of command supporting, advocates supporting can encounter. There's generally speaking three main categories of retaliation. Reprisal, and frankly, reprisal is one that's almost used interchangeably with retaliation and causes some confusion. There's maltreatment and there's ostracism. Without going line by line of the slide, let me hit the wave tops. Reprisal. The foot stomp for reprisal is personnel action. That could be a negative personnel action taken or a positive favorable personnel action denied. If you think it might involve a personnel action, it needs to go to the Inspector General's office. Ultimately, it rests with command to address it, but it still needs to go to the Inspector General's office. Ostracism. Ostracism, simply put, is getting voted off the island. You're no longer part of the team. You're no longer part of the friend group. You're just no longer part of our social circle as a result of what's going on and your participation in what's going on. A third component is maltreatment. Maltreatment is rather broad, but generally speaking, it includes things like bullying, intimidation, hazing, extra duties that should not be assigned, and it belongs to command to address. Ultimately, all retaliation, prevention, and response belongs to the chain of command, but it's important that we get the right misconduct investigated by the right agency. So if it's reprisal and there's a sense of a personnel action, it needs to go to the Inspector General. If it sounds like ostracism, it might be best used with a 15-6 or leader engagement. And if it's maltreatment and it crosses a line towards, say, stalking or personal damage, theft, keying of a car, something along those lines, and it's criminal, it actually needs to go to CID. At the end of the day, commanders own preventing it and they own responding to it. But we have to get the right agency investigating the right crime. So what could happen, conceivably, if we're not accurate, is I could see retaliatory behavior that's not reprisal. I call it reprisal, kick it to IG. IG comes back and says, yeah, not reprisal. Someone then hears, oh, it's not reprisal, conflate the terms and say there's no retaliatory behavior, we don't need to address it, and that would be wrong. Let's look at retaliation through the lens of a vignette. In this case, Specialist Smith is a female soldier who's the victim, although please remember, about half of our victims of sexual assault in the Army every year are male soldiers. But in this case, Specialist Smith is sexually assaulted by her platoon sergeant. When she makes the report, the company sides with him. People are posting in support of him on Facebook. People are spreading rumor about her character, about her own choices, ones that she may or may not have made. And this includes her roommate. She feels that it's a response of her report. Moving forward, Specialist Smith is pulled from her normal duties and put on whatever taskings her section gets. She asks about it. She would prefer to be in her job. And she sold something to the effect of, you just need to be pulled aside so that you have time for all this sharp stuff. Now fast forward a couple weeks and Specialist Smith finds that she's the one who's the permanent CQ staff duty runner. She asked the ops sergeant about it. Presumably he owns the duty roster and he's told, hey, everyone just needs to do their job. But she notices that she owns staff duty runner or CQ runner every weekend, at least for the next 3-4 weeks, presumably for the rest of her life. So as we look at each of these components, that first section where there was possibly ostracism, that will belong to the chain of command. The commander should talk to legal and consider a 15-6. In the second part, where she's pulled from her job and her normal duties, which she's ostensibly good at and would help advance her career in the Army, that very well may be a personnel action taken. And in this case, it needs to go to the Inspector General and the commander should follow up with their staff judge advocate, because ultimately it's between that commander and IG to get to the bottom of it and find the right solution. The last one may actually cross the line into maltreatment. It's not entirely clear, so that's why the command needs to get with the staff judge advocate to figure out if a 15-6 or some sort of law enforcement might be warranted for investigating this. Ultimately though, regardless of who investigates retaliatory behavior, it's up to the command and it's up to leaders ultimately to be aware that it could happen, not just to the victim of the crime, but to any witness or bystander or anyone supporting, a SARC, a VA, a super supportive squad leader, and look out and prevent this and respond to it appropriately if it is reported. The last change is one that you should have already seen in your formation now, and it's that leaders own the annual sharp refresher training. We're not doing the 3.5-hour death by PowerPoint anymore. We're doing a graphic training aid led at the lowest level, hopefully in the form of discussion facilitated by that NCOIC or OIC, and not just a sharp rep with a PowerPoint projector. If you're a leader responsible for teaching the sharp annual refresher training and you're not entirely comfortable with it yet, because after all, you've gotten the same 3-hour PowerPoint slide that everyone else has for the last 10 years. If you want, we have a Train the Trainer series of videos as well. You can find the link below in the description. No amount of policy changes are going to make a difference if our teammates aren't aware of the information. Please continue to promote SHARP in your area. Think through your formation and how they could best benefit from this content. Consider hitting the share button below and texting it or messaging it to your colleagues or teammates or soldiers.